Hello everybody. Today we are going to be doing synthetic division. Now, this is quite a nice type of question that you can get in the examination, although I'm not really a big fan of it. Why? Because sometimes it's time consuming only at the beginning of answering this type of question. So we are given a question as follows. I'm going straight into an example and then we'll work through this example, then we'll do the other example, and then we can call it a day, because it's actually very easy to catch on to all of this because there's a pattern that you can follow. So the question says factorize f of x is equal to 6x cubed minus 11x squared minus 3x plus 2 using synthetic division. So first things first, how on earth are we going to do this? Well, the first step that you need is to find out what is the factor of this function, meaning if we plug in a point, a root, we should get f of x being equal to 0. Okay, so this is the one problem that I have with these types of questions, is that this is the time consuming part. So we need to find the root. Obviously they won't give you a fraction, hopefully, so you'll probably be using whole numbers. So let's actually try f of 1, and then at x equals 1, right? This is essentially, what are we saying? This is x equals 1, which implies to us it's x minus 1 equals to 0. So which means it is what? Divided by x minus 1. So let's see what happens over there. So 6 into 1 cubed minus 11 into 1 squared minus 3 into 1 plus 2. What is that equal to? Well, this is just going to be 6 times 1 cubed, which is a 6, minus 11 times 1 squared, which is just minus 11, minus 3, plus 2. And then what we're going to get over here is just going to be negative 11 minus 3, which is equal to minus 14. Minus 14 plus 2 is minus 12. Minus 12 plus 6 is just equal to negative 6. But notice that negative 6 is not 0. So therefore, x minus 1 is not a factor. So we can say not a factor. So let's move on to another one. Let's use f of 2. Right? We just go up one by 1. And this implies to us that if we have x equals 2, this tells us that we're going to have x minus 2 equals 0. Because all we're doing is taking the 2 over the other side. And then this would be what we are dividing the function by. So f of 2 would just be 6 into 2 cubed minus 11 to the times 2 squared minus 3 into 2 plus 2. And then notice 6 times 2 cubed is just 6 times 8, and 6 times 8 is just going to be equal to 48. Minus 11 times 2 squared, which is obviously 11 times 4, which is just 44. Minus 3 times 2, which is 6, plus 2. And then this is equal to what? 48 minus 44 is equal to 4. 4 minus 6 is equal to negative 2. Negative 2 plus 2 is just 0. So what do you notice? When x is equal to when x is equal to positive 2, then therefore we have 0 as an output for the function. So therefore x minus 2 is indeed a factor. So x minus 2 is a factor. Should also put a bracket over here. So what does this imply to us? This is where we get straight into our synthetic division. So please follow these steps and you'll see that how the sequence goes. So the first thing that you need to do is write down your factor, which is 2. And I usually do a little bit of a block here at the top. And then all you're going to do right next to the 2 is use the coefficients in the cubic function, which is the f of x. So what is the coefficient of x cubed? It's positive 6. What is the coefficient of the x squared? It's just negative 11. What is the coefficient of x? It's just negative 3. And the coefficient of, it's just the constant, I guess, so we can just say positive 2. Okay, it's x to the power of 0 if you're curious, by the way. And then we draw a line. Just leave a space open and then we draw a line on our page. Okay, and then the first thing you do is take the first value down as it is. Okay, so do you notice that we got all the coefficients? So this is the coefficient of x cubed, this is the coefficient of x squared, this is the coefficient of x, and this is just the constant, which you can say c Or you could say x to the power of 0. Because x to the power of 0 is just 1. And that is why it's just the constant. Okay. So there we go. First thing afterwards is we take this 6 down. And then every single time when we take a value down, we take that value and we multiply it by the factor, the root value. And then we take that multiplied value here underneath the next coefficient. So 6 times 2 is 12, positive 12. And then we just add these two together and put it down. What you see is the first one couldn't add with anything, so we could take it straight down. But this one we have two values, so we're going to add them together. Negative 11 plus 12 is equal to what? It's positive 1, right? And then we're going to do the exact same thing at the bottom. So we're just going to do that. We're going to take the positive 1 and we are going to multiply it by the 2. And then we write down positive 2 over here. And then we add these two together, negative 3 plus 2, which is negative 1. And we take the negative 1 and multiply it by the 2. And then we get negative 2 over here. And then we add these two together and we're left with 0. And this 0, the final value right underneath, is our remainder. Okay. So this is our remainder and it's 0 in this case. And right now, what did you notice? All we did was we took the coefficients of the cubic polynomial and now we just found the coefficients of our polynomial, of our quadratic, which is going to be the x squared, this one is going to be x, and this is going to be the constant, or x to the power of 0. Okay, the coefficients, these are our new coefficients. So just go over this part again if you got lost, so that you can see the sequence. Otherwise you can check the next example out when we use it again. But what does this tell us? This implies to us now that our function of x is factorized using what? X minus 2, right? So obviously x minus 2 is one of our factors, so we will have to include it. And this is multiplied by what? Our coefficients that make up our polynomial, our trinomial, which is 6x squared. Notice we start with the 6x squared, then it is plus 1x, so plus 1x, and then this is minus 1, which is the constant. Now we need to factorize this. So we still have x minus 2, but we need to factorize this. Now you can use grouping method or whatnot. Otherwise, you could always use the quadratic formula. How do you use the quadratic formula to get your factors? You do it like this. So if you say x is equal to negative b, so it's obviously going to be negative into 1 plus minus the square root of b squared, which is 1 squared, minus 4ac, which is 4 times 6 times negative 1. This is all divided by 2 times a, which is 2 times 6. Okay. And then when you put this in your calculator, right? So if we use the positive version, so let's talk about the positive version here. Okay, when we use the positive version, we get x is equal to, I have to put in my calculator, 1 over 3. But notice that this is not what we, remember what we did for the last one, right? Let me go up quickly. When we found the factor, we let it from x equals 2 all the way to x minus 2 equals 0. So we need to get it in that form in order to make it a factor, if that makes sense. Okay? Because we're factorizing it. So therefore, what does this imply to us? If we multiply both sides by 3 to take the denominator over, first, we have to do that all the way, by the way. Whenever we have a fraction, we have to take the denominator over. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3, then we get 3x is equal to 1. And then therefore, if we take the 1 over, it'll become 3x minus 1 equals 0. Therefore, the factor that we're going to have here is, the first factor is just going to be 3x minus 1. Okay. And then what about the negative version? The negative version, when we use a negative in the quadratic equation, we are going to get the following. It's going to be x equals negative 1 over 2. So this implies to us, if we take the denominator over, we're going to have 2x equals negative 1, which implies to us that 2x plus 1 is equal to 0, because we take the negative 1 over. So therefore, our factor, our second factor is going to be 2x plus 1. And there we go. We just factorized f of x using synthetic division, and obviously we just needed to remember our factor theorem as well. Let's do another example and then we can call it a day. Okay, holy moly, what on earth are we doing here now? So we have solve for x if x cubed plus 5x squared plus 2x minus 8 is equal to 0. Now this is going to be a funny one, because remember when we had quadratic equations, it was only, let's say, this part, and we solved for x by factorizing the left hand side and then letting each bracket be 0. But now we have a cube. What are we going to do from here? Now we're going to do exactly what we did in the last question, which was factorize the cubic polynomial into all the linear equation combinations, right, to get all the factors, and then we solve for x from there, the same way we usually do it with quadratic equations. So first things first, we need to set ourselves up for synthetic division, because it is a cubic function. So then all we need to do is find the factor. So let's start with, let's say at x equals to 1. Okay, we need to see where this is equal to 0, right, the function. So at x equals 1, we are going to have what? 1 cubed plus 5 into 1 squared plus 2 into 1 minus 8. And this is equal to what? It's going to be 1 cubed, which is just 1, plus 5 plus 2 minus 8. And then 1 plus 5 plus 2 is equal to 8. So 8 minus 8 is just equal to 0. So therefore, we can say that x equals 1 is indeed going to be a root. So this implies to us that we're going to have x minus 1 equals to 0. And then therefore we can say here that x minus 1 is a factor. X minus 1 is a factor in this case. Okay. So now we can do our synthetic division. So we can do the 1 in the block and then do the coefficients. So what do you notice? The coefficients are going to be 1, positive 5. So positive 1, positive 5, positive 2, and negative 8. So positive 1, then it's positive 5, then it's positive 2, then it's negative 8. And notice that obviously the positive 1 is for the coefficient of x cubed, the coefficient of x squared is positive 5, coefficient of x is just positive 2, and negative 8 is just the constant, or x to the power of 0. So then we obviously draw a line, space in between, and then we take the first value down. Okay, which is positive 1. Now we can do the multiplication across. So 1 times 1 is just going to be positive 1. 5 plus 1 is just equal to positive 6. And then 6 times 1 is just going to be equal to positive 6. And then 2 plus 6 is just positive 8. 8 times 1 is just positive 8. Negative 8 plus 8 is just equal to 0. And remember that 0 is just your remainder. So I'm going to say remainder. Okay. And then remember that we went from the cubic coefficients to the the quadratic or the trinomial coefficients, which this would be the coefficient of x squared, 6 would be the coefficient of x, and then 8 would just be the constant or x to the power of 0 coefficient. So therefore, what are we going to do? We are going to now say that 0 is equal to, remember, the question didn't say f of x equals to all of that. It said 0 is equal to all of that. So therefore 0 is equal to what? We used the root to be x minus 1, remember? Or the factor to be x minus 1. From here, where we did this, all of this. And now, from here, we're going to take the coefficients. So therefore it's going to be 1x squared plus 6x plus 8. Okay. And then from here, we just factorize, right? We can factorize this one. It's actually easier. So x squared gives us x and x. 8 can be broken up into 2 and 4. It can also be broken up into 1 and 8. Okay. But what combination gives us 6? Well, clearly 2 and 4 gives us 6. So therefore, we can say x minus 1 multiplied by x. And then we're going to have x over here also on the left-hand side. And then therefore we have 2 and 4. And then when we take the signs, the biggest one gets a positive, positive and a positive gives us a positive. Therefore, these are the factors, and it's all equal to 0, so we let every single bracket be equal to 0. So therefore, x minus 1 equals to 0, or x plus 2 equals to 0, or x plus 4 equals to 0, and then therefore, this tells us that x is equal to 1, or x is equal to negative 2, or x is equal to negative 4. And those are the final answers. Therefore, we solved for x. And that is how you use synthetic division.